The announcement came halfway through dessert, right when the candles had burned low and the restaurant lights felt softer than they really were. My mother lifted her glass. My father stood beside her, one hand on the back of her chair like he had done in every anniversary photo since I was a child. The room quieted on its own. It always did for them. "We've decided," she said, smiling in that careful way she uses when she wants a moment to feel larger than it is, "that next week we're all going to Hawaii. The whole family." A second celebration. There was a pause, half a beat, and then the table broke into applause. My cousins leaned toward each other, already talking about beaches and drinks and matching outfits. My aunts laughed. My uncles clapped my father on the back. Someone said, "It's about time," like this was something everyone had been waiting for. I clapped too. It would have looked strange if I didn't. I was sitting near the end of the table where I usually end up, close enough to be included, far enough that no one notices when I'm quiet. I let the noise settle before I spoke. It wasn't a challenge. It was a practical question. What time is the departure? My father didn't even look at me at first. He was still smiling at my older brother. When he finally turned, the smile stayed, but something in his eyes didn't. "You don't know," he said lightly, almost amused, "because you're not part of this trip." For a second I thought I had misheard him. It happens sometimes in loud rooms, when words arrive out of order. "You can stay behind," he added, like he was offering something reasonable. "Take care of all the kids. We'll need someone responsible here." A few people at the table laughed softly, not cruelly, just comfortably, as if this made sense, as if it had already been decided in some invisible meeting I hadn't been invited to. I felt that familiar shift inside me. The one where my first instinct is to adjust, to make it easier for everyone else. To say of course. To nod. To carry the weight, so the room can stay light. I had done it before. Birthdays, holidays, emergencies that weren't really emergencies. I was the one who stayed back, who picked up, who made sure everything kept running. "You're just so dependable," my mother would say, as if it were a compliment that explained everything. I let a few seconds pass, no one noticed. They had already moved on to discussing flights and hotels. "I won't be able to do that," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't look around the table for support. I just said it the way you say something factual, like the weather or the time. My father's hand stilled on the back of the chair. "What do you mean?" my mother asked, still smiling, but tighter now. "It's only for a week." "I won't be available to stay behind and take care of everyone's children," I said. "I wasn't asked before you made that plan." There was a small, uncomfortable silence. My cousin reached for her glass and missed it slightly, then laughed it off. One of my aunts said, "Oh, come on, it's family," in a tone meant to smooth things over. My father's smile faded a little. "We're asking you now," he said. "It's not a big thing. You're not doing anything important next week." That landed in the center of the table more heavily than he intended. For a moment, I almost explained myself the way I always do, softening my own schedule, making my own responsibilities sound flexible so I don't inconvenience anyone. But I thought about the email I had received 3 weeks ago. The one confirming the project I had been working toward for months. The contract I had signed. The fact that I had already rearranged other parts of my life to be available for it. I took my phone out of my bag and placed it on the table, not dramatically, just as part of the conversation. "I actually am doing something important," I said. "I start a new contract on Monday. It's been scheduled for a while. I'm required to be there in person for the first 2 weeks." My father frowned. "You can reschedule that." "I can't," I said. "It's not flexible. It's a signed agreement. If I don't show up, I lose the contract and I'm liable for penalties." I turned the phone slightly so it faced him. The confirmation email was open. The dates were clear. The name of the company was there, along with the start time and the clause about attendance. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't need to. The room had already shifted. My brother leaned back in his chair, his expression changing from relaxed to calculating. One of my aunts stopped smiling. Someone at the far end of the table said quietly, "Oh, so you knew about this," my mother said. It wasn't really a question. "Yes," I said, "I've known for weeks." "And you didn't think to tell us?" she asked. I held her gaze for a moment. No one asked me about my availability before making the plan. That was the first time the silence felt complete. Not awkward, just clear. My father exhaled slowly, like he was recalculating something in his head. "Well," he said, "we'll have to figure something else out then." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement. But it was the first time the responsibility moved away from me and spread across the table. "Maybe we can get a sitter," one of my cousins suggested. "For a week," another said, eyebrows lifting. "Or we rotate," my aunt added. "Each of us takes a couple of days." The conversation started to reorganize itself. It wasn't smooth. There were small notes of irritation, practical concerns, questions about cost and logistics. The trip was still happening, but it had changed shape. It wasn't effortless anymore. I sat there and listened, not offering solutions. After a while, my mother reached for her glass again, but she didn't raise it this time. She looked at me instead. "You could have handled this differently," she said quietly. I nodded. "Maybe. But I think this is the first time I've handled it honestly." She didn't respond. She looked down at the tablecloth, smoothing a crease that didn't need smoothing. Dinner continued. People talked. Plans were adjusted. Someone ordered coffee. The candles burned down completely and were taken away by a waiter who had no idea anything significant had just happened. When we stood up to leave, my father squeezed my shoulder in that automatic public way he does. It was lighter than usual. Brief. "We'll talk later," he said. "Okay," I replied. Outside, the night air felt cooler than I expected. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching everyone gather into small groups, still discussing flights and hotels and now, quietly, childcare. My younger cousin came up beside me. She hesitated, then said, "I didn't realize they just expected you to stay." "They usually do," I said. She nodded slowly. "It's not really fair." "No," I said. "It's not." She gave me a small, uncertain smile, then went to join the others. I didn't stay long after that. I said my goodbyes, hugged my mother, nodded to my father, and walked to my car. There was no sense of victory, no rush of triumph. Just a steady, unfamiliar feeling of standing in my own space without shrinking it for anyone else. I knew things would be different now, not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, just different. The pattern had been visible tonight, in a way it hadn't been before, and once something like that is seen clearly, it's hard to return it to its old shape. I started the engine, checked the time on the dashboard, and drove home, knowing that next week I would be exactly where I had chosen to be.